All right. I am going to tell you about a conflict called the Bone Wars. Um, First off, I hope this fits the requirements of the assignment. It did sound like the assignment was asking for a fictional story. This is true, but it is pretty funny. So I'm going to put it out there. So the Bone Wars are a conflict that happens in the 1880s between two paleontologists, Edward Cope and Charles Marsh. And it's essentially a race to see who can discover the most fossils and the most new species and make the biggest impact on paleontology as a whole. And the rivalry starts when in the late 1870s. And Cope and Marsh they're not friends, but they're good professional acquaintances. You know, they're in the same social circles, and if they see each other at a conference or an event or whatever, they will, be respectful and have a conversation and possibly a coffee or whatever it is two adult men do to hang out in 1875. Anyway, but Cope decides that he's going to show Marsh one of his fossil hunting sites in Pennsylvania. And Cope shows Marsh around, and then Cope leaves, and Marsh sticks around. And Marsh likes the site, and he's impressed with it, and he decides that he's going to pay the guys that Cope has digging it and doing excavation. He's going to pay them to divert their finds to him instead of to Cope. And Cope doesn't find out about this for some time, but when he does find out about it, it contributes to the conflict. And what actually really starts it is that Cope discovers a reptilian species called the Elasmosaurus. And the Elasmosaurus is really goofy looking because it's got a long tail, a really long neck, and a very short tail. And I apologize for my camera framing. I've got this big rock in the way. It's got a long neck, and it's got a really short tail. And Cope reconstructs it, and he invites Marsh over to his lab. He's got the bones all nicely laid out on the floor. And Marsh takes a look at it, and he decides that Cope has the head on the wrong end. And he points this out, and Cope is understandably irritated by this because, well, he's a professional, and how would he ever put the head on the wrong end? And so they bicker back and forth about it for a little while. And then they decide that the way they're going to settle it is they're going to invite a third party, Joseph Leidy, who's a mutual paleontologist friend of theirs, to come and settle it. And so Leidy comes in, and he has a long look at the fossil, and he decides that he agrees with Marsh, that Cope had put the head on the wrong end. This is embarrassing, but it's not that big of a deal, right? Just fix it and forget about it, right? It's not that big a deal. Unless you've already published a paper on it, as Cope had. And so the mature and the professional and the respectable thing to do is to publish a retraction, right? Say, sorry, oops, I messed this up. His head is on the wrong end. Go ahead and ignore that paper, basically. But that's not what Cope does. You see, this is the late 1870s. We don't have instantaneous digital distribution of materials like we do now. And Cope, being a rather wealthy New Englander, decides that he's going to instead just purchase all of the copies of this paper he can find and dispose of them to sweep it under the rug. Believe it or not, he mostly succeeds in this. Some people do retain their copies, including Charles Marsh and Joseph Leidy. But Cope is able to mostly succeed in burying this humiliating mistake. Up until a few years later, when him, Marsh, and Leidy are all at a paleontology conference, and him and Leidy get mixed up in this debate, right? And what the debate is about is not important, but the point is that they are in this debate with a group of other very respectable paleontologists. And Cope stands up, Cope makes an assertion, and somebody challenges it, and Cope stands up and very proudly says, "In my entire career as a paleontologist, I have never been wrong." To which Joseph Leidy stands up and points out in front of the entire group the instant in which Cope had put the head on the wrong end and then published a paper about it. Cope was obviously pretty upset by this, and he went to Charles Marsh and said, "Hey, you're going to stick up for me, right? You're not going to stand for this." And Marsh, understandably, he said, "No, I'm not going to stick up for you. You put his head on the wrong end. You absolutely have been wrong, and you're lying about it." So that was the end of warm, fuzzy relations between Charles Marsh and Edward Cope. And that is the end of my speech delivery. So hopefully you enjoyed, hopefully you had a laugh, and hopefully you learned a little something.